Good afternoon and welcome back to AGI, Advance, Grow, and Innovate with AI, where we try to break down all things artificial intelligence for all those of you out there who aren't software engineers, although I have a good friend and a pretty technical genius here with me today. Fasa Husain has his own podcast. He's are you out of LA or San Diego?
I'm out of LA.
LA.
Yeah,
Introduce yourself, Fasa, and then we'll get into how you and I met and all the fun we've had.
for sure. Hey guys. Thank you very much for having me over, Jason. First of all, and I am a scientist by training, and I have been in healthcare as long as I remember, since I think my undergrad, and always been in masters, bachelor's, masters, and PhD. Then I got into pharmaceutical industry. And right now, I have my own small company called Futurize Now, and I also have a podcast that I host called HealthTech Heroes, where I discuss the junction between healthcare and AI, and that is where my focus is right now. I think a lot of industries are, and a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of businessmen are struggling how to adapt to the changes in technology, and I think I'm able to help a few in that aspect and a little contribution here and there. And the future is here, man. It is at the junction of technology and every other industry. And I dwell in the industry between healthcare and technology.
Yes, and we will put links to all that in the show notes. I can't wait to ask you some questions about some healthcare ideas I've had. But let's back up just a little bit to like how you and I met and kind of what's going on in the AI industry as a whole. Because a couple things, I mean, we had a lot of drops over the last couple of weeks in foundation models dropped. We had Gemini 3. We had Google or Grok had an upgrade. ChatGPT had an upgrade. Nano Banana is absolutely crazy. Sora has come out since you and I went to San Francisco in June of this year. So first off, Fasa turned me on to Riverside, where we're recording right now. And I have to tell you, for a year, I have been a cheapskate and just used the free version. And when I went to open it up to meet with you today, I had reached my limit for 2 tracks, and I'm like, oh, I can't do that to them. And I looked, and there was a 35% discount for a year's subscription. So I called up my dad and I was like, Dad, I'll split it with you. Will you give me this for Christmas? And so I now have an actual pro subscription to Riverside. Thank you. It is a phenomenal. Have you noticed the clips it makes? It has hooks now, like underneath there. If you scroll all the way down, those are great.
Absolutely. The great thing about Riverside is they're very much focused on the podcast and what they do is almost every week going forward, you will see a significant difference, like almost every week. So I have been using the pro version for many months now. And every time I go into Riverside, hey, there is something that was bothering me and they have fixed it. And that's how they keep doing it. And like 2 or 3 months, you'll see it's completely different software. Highly recommended. Riverside is great. And what they are doing is something on the video editing side, which things like CapCut and Descript are really good at. They are actually matching up on that side too.
Yeah, it's awesome. And the free version, I can't complain because the fact that it auto generates clips, so you could, all it really couldn't do was much scheduling. And eventually, if you have too many interviews, it will not separate the soundtracks. But I will say today, just being on the paid version, I can already tell the sound's better and the picture's better as I look at it, which is a good thing because I was just using all my different Google accounts and getting a free week of Adobe podcasts and fixing the sound and then switching Google accounts the next week. So no more of that. No more. I'm a terrible hacker when it comes to free accounts. But so you turned me on to that. Then we just kind of met and you asked me to be on your podcast. I think originally we really hit it off, and then you hit me up with an email and you're like, hey, I have an extra ticket to this healthcare AI thing in San Francisco, Human+AI Tech Week. Do you want to come out? And we stayed in a hostel. We ate some amazing Indian food. We heard everything from like the newest, latest shiny things in healthcare tech to like some Australian dude that wants to use AI to decode what plants and animals are saying and then give them a digital wallet and let them have more say in how we globally run the world.
Yeah, that was, I think, I did not know what to expect out of Human plus Tech Week. I had no idea. So I did warn you. but it turned out to be a lot better than what I had anticipated. The thought process, I think there were no boundaries on what you can think about when it comes to the human and the tech interaction. And I think that is a really important conversation to have. It's like, hey, this is what the tech can do, and this is what we need to think about. I think going forward in our conversation, we can actually discuss about uh, how we really do not have a thought boundary anymore. Right? You can think of it whatever you want, and you can actually achieve it. That's where the technology is headed. If you want to succeed in near future, I think it's a very important mindset to have, and I think human tech kind of jarred us into that mindset. And besides that, I thought there were other funny experiences where I found out that I can speak a little bit of Chinese. And then we went a little bit low key stalking on OpenAI. That was
Yeah.
fun experiences.
We did. No one would. It's right next to Uber, and no one would admit it. They're like in
Yeah.
stealth mode down there. Absolute 10th and market. Yes,
Yeah, yeah. So that
that's
was
funny.
pretty cool.
I would say the one thing that I walked away from there, like thinking, and it was because we were in San Francisco, but I walked away from there thinking, damn, there's a lot of cool, good-looking people in tech, and there's a lot more women in tech than I thought. And then I went to a conference on the East Coast, and I was like, no, tech's pretty much got the crowd I thought. We were just in California.
Okay, yeah, that is true, and I think that is for the better. I think perhaps we do need less testosterone-filled decisions in every single field, every single aspect of business. I think people in general, and especially right now where the technology is going to be cheaper, more efficient, that the human side has to be prevalent, and I think less testosterone there will help that.
I could not agree more. Nicole Bradford put on a great conference. There was all kinds of different experiences there, and it was really neat to be out there. And we did eat some damn good Indian food.
Oh yeah, that was really good. That was so
Yes, it
good.
was. Oh man. So let's get into one of the things I want to ask you about that I've noticed. One of the things I don't think people really paid attention to that has concerned me since I last talked to you, when they put out, and I'm not going to get, we won't get real political here, but when they put out the US AI policy that Trump put out back in the summertime, and then the All In podcast did like a series of conversations with Jensen Wong, with President Trump, with JD Vance. And when Trump got up and talked, Jensen was in front of him in the audience, and he said, oh yeah, there's Jensen. Like, I didn't even know what Nvidia was when I got here. And then I'm asked, like, what's this Nvidia? And then if I found out it's a monopoly, and I was like, oh well, we're breaking that up. And essentially he basically said that the people around him told him there's no way you can break up Nvidia. They're way too necessary. And to hear someone like Trump, who loves to do shit like break up companies, admit that he didn't have the power to break up Nvidia, to me was a red flag of moving toward, the more of the like big corporations having more power than government. It's the first time I actually heard something like that. So when I heard that Peter Thiel and SoftBank just dumped all their Nvidia stock, and I love Jensen and I love Nvidia, but I think the fact that Google trained the entirety of Gemini 3 on the tensor processing chips, and then Nvidia does no longer really has a market on really good AI chips, may be a great competition to be coming to the market.
And no, that's a really good point, Jason. I mean, we have seen historically, right? Standard, it took a long time for Standard Oil to be broken up and into like several aspects, and eventually it might happen, but it will take a long time, and each one of them will become their own monopolies anyway. And Microsoft was another great example in like last 2 decades where you simply cannot break down their monopoly here in the United States, at least. But there are a lot more restrictions on Microsoft in Europe, but in the United States, I think it is going to be difficult. That brings us to the point, where do we get the balance? The balance of non-monopoly by one company. I think there are two aspects that are going to work itself out. Is one, as you said, like, hey, there's another big corporation that throws unlimited money on this and creates some balance between these large corporations. I think the victims are going to be these small startups who cannot survive in this onslaught of like, you cannot compete with like $100,000 against $100 billion. investment. So that is going to happen, unfortunately. But there is going to be other balance, I think, is very important. What we saw with DeepSeek a few months ago, where they cut down the price of generating predictive analytics by tenfold and with completely different technology. And I think it gives an opportunity for other countries to compete too. And I think it is going to be healthy. And I think we need that because humans are not going to compete with AI, but AI can compete with AI. And there is a balance, always a balance where we stand because you don't have like just one LLM ruling the entire world. And when that happens, that there could be trouble.
Yeah, I feel like, well, two things. One, I knew Huawei would catch up, and they did. Huawei is now like a lot more people know the term Huawei than they did when you and I met back in June. And I was like, watch, if they keep restricting these chips, the H100s and now the Blackwells from China, then China will figure out how to manufacture chips that are equivalent. And Huawei's damn near there. So we've got some global competition in that front. But I do think that we've kind of failed at capitalism in the United States. I think capitalism is a beautiful thing. The role of government and capitalism is to not allow too many companies to get too big, to keep that competition going among smaller companies. And if you look at the Mag 7, I mean, the amount of the GDP that they now own and the market that they now own, it's concerning at best.
Yeah, they have taken control of these things. The moment that we have like around 700, 800 billionaires here in the United States. The fact that you have billionaires in an economy, I'm not against being billionaires, but also it is a symptom of something that is going wrong. And that amount of effort that takes to create $100 billion for one person is someone has to pay that amount of work, amount of talent. Somebody has to sacrifice that for a certain number of 700 people to become billionaires. And I think that is quite unfortunate. What I am hoping is that the AI gives a chance for smaller companies, smaller entities to become big. So there is a prediction that there is a possibility of a lot of one-person companies becoming million-dollar companies. And in fact, there is a pretty good chance that one-person company can become a billion-dollar company as well. And that is
And I
because of the efficiency gains gained through AI.
And the fact that I don't think it's going to be one model to rule them all. I mean, even Mustafa Suleiman has talked about it, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Like, when you're going for that, like just one big bucket model, it's just too much. You're better off with the slightly smaller models that are trained to a domain or an industry or whatever, And I do think now, my prediction is Google will be the winner overall because of DeepMind, because of Demis Hassabis. I love Demis. I love that DeepMind is going to be competing with Eli Lilly before too long. They're into drug discovery. They're into protein folding. They're into real world like simulations, and they'll get into robotics because of that. I think Google is unstoppable because they're not just creating a commercial chat bot. They're actually still full of AI scientists. And the rest of the AI scientists seem to have, who aren't working for a company that's just paying them a bunch of money to try to create commercial products, seem to be moving into like these safe super intelligence type of nonprofit research labs like Ilya Sutskever's in. And I just heard him in an interview the other day. Like he can't even tell anybody what the hell he's working on, and yet he's raising like $3 trillion on his name. Mira Murati did the same thing with Thinking Machines Labs. I think she may be onto something, but the whole like flywheel economy and potential collapses, I don't think that the whole economy is going to collapse, but I do think that they're at some point in time, like Nvidia giving OpenAI a bunch of money to promise they're going to buy Nvidia chips to raise Nvidia's profits so that OpenAI, I mean, that whole circular investment thing can't last forever without some big problems.
100%. I think there is going to be a collapse, but I think this is going to be a selective collapse as opposed to the dot-com bust that we had in 2000s. The reason for that is I think with the internet, we had not figured out how to actually make it a revenue generation machine. But I think with the AI from the get-go, the fact that they had a $20 membership, is a big difference between, for example, Yahoo having an email or Gmail having an email, which was like absolutely zero cost to the consumer. It is they were hoping that at some point we will have this tipping point where our advertising money would pay for maintaining all this technology, and eventually happened. And between that period was the aftermath of the dot-com burst. But for AI, I think we are paying our bills, but there are, for every company that is actually bringing in some amount of revenue, there are 10 other companies which are not.
Yeah,
And I think
and
that is where
that
is
is
the
the one
bust
thing
is
I'll
happening.
flip on when it comes to like the big ass companies is they are investing their own money, most of them.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
like Google, Microsoft, they're all spending their own Nvidia, they're spending their own money. Now OpenAI has raised a ton of money. There'll be some venture capitalists who has did you see Sam have a fit when Brad Gerstner asked him how he plans on paying like so many $1 trillion in debt with the projected revenue of only like $20 million this year, and Sam got all upset. Was like, Brad, if you want to give your stocks back, there's plenty of people that will buy them. And it stop. And what's funny? This is what's funny. And I love Satya anyway, right? Satya Nadella. But Satya, he was on this interview with Sam, and the whole time Sam was talking, and Sam to me is like Eddie Haskell. He's like just this cocky kid that tries to come across as he's a hell of a sales guy, right? But so Satya is there, and he's just like kind of giggling and laughing and playing along. And then Sam leaves, and the next half of the interview, Satya starts talking business, and you're like, holy shit, this guy is like way more business savvy than Sam. He's just not looking for the spotlight, right? He just dove into the conversation, and I was like, never underestimate Satya Nadella, man. That guy, he had some big shoes to fill when he moved into the spot in Microsoft, and I've loved what he's done since he's been there. Even though Copilot sucks, but sorry, Satya.
Microsoft has an issue in adapting to new technology because they want to rebrand everything as Microsoft. Apparently, did you know that they were the first ones to buy the Android, the whole team? They brought in
No,
the whole team, and they had a really good advantage, and they could have been the Android team instead of Google. Literally, they bought the whole team, but they completely apparently modified the whole team to work as a Microsoft team. And I think the Copilot is the same thing. They take it and they get into this legacy software and they try to fit the Copilot into PowerPoint. Think about this PowerPoint, how dominant it is in the technology, and why is like Gamma AI so popular?
yeah,
If Why is Canva so popular? Because they're
yeah.
trying to take this modern technology, fit into the legacy thing, and that's a Microsoft culture more than think Satya Nadella has tried to change it a little bit, I guess, but I think that's what Microsoft does. It's like try to get it into the legacy. They don't want to tear off from there. It's a little bit probably there is some business logic behind it. Sometimes fail to see it. So yeah,
Well, and
Satya is he transformed Microsoft, man. I mean, just getting into the cloud space that was huge. People hated him for it, but that decision made all the difference for the Microsoft.
Well, and the investment in OpenAI, people
Oh,
didn't think
yeah.
was a good idea, and it's obviously kept them right where they are. I mean, they have access to GPT 5.1 to. I don't know why they can't figure out how to make that API run right in Copilot, but now they're partnering with Claude, and I'm hopeful. We're paying for Copilot again because I do think for businesses, this is what I think. And I tell kids at community colleges when they're like, "Well, what should I, should I go with Claude? Should I go?" I'm like, "No, learn Copilot because most small to medium sized businesses are comfortable with Microsoft and they feel safe." Even at our healthcare company, if we're going to do anything that is protected or HIPAA protected information, we do not do it outside the Microsoft
Exactly.
environment. So they have a moat there, right? And if their technology caught
100%.
up to it, they could really leverage that moat.
I mean, like you spoke about a little bit about the Eli Lilly as well. I think this kind of brings the whole circle to that point that you made. Like Google's DeepMind can compete with Eli Lilly. Eventually, what's going to happen is Microsoft's and Google, they're not going to necessarily compete with entrenched healthcare companies like Eli Lilly, because there is a whole lot of regulation that goes on behind this, the medical teams, the approach, and everything. So, what is going to happen is these technologies will get integrated into these big companies. So, there are going to be partners, thought partners with these companies, and for them almost I want to go out and on a limb. These enterprises are not going to accept, to your point, the gamma AI. They are always going to depend on the PowerPoint just because of that security issue. Just because
Yes.
of that security issue, they're not going to transfer. So it's important that we learn Copilot. We are comfortable with this, and it is very important to now. But that's the job market we're talking about. If you want to get into jobs with the
Yes.
enterprises, that is where you want to be. But if you're an entrepreneur, you want to think a little bit differently.
Yes, I could not agree more. And it's funny because I've been using ChatGPT to create PowerPoints anymore. It just creates like the template and downloads it as a PowerPoint, and then you hit design. Like I've gotten over the fact that you actually need to spend hours on PowerPoints because I don't think people care that much. But I did that the other day, and I downloaded it to a PDF and stuck it in Nano Banana in the image generator and said make a start slide and an end slide, and here's the theme I want, and here's a picture of me, and they were just badass slides. I was like, I bet you could use that. I mean, I've seen people do entire comic strips now using Nano Banana, and I did one using ChatGPT. I mean, they all get better so fast.
Oh, 100%. And I remember I went to a workshop about 2 months ago, and I was blown away by the technology that OpenArt AI had. And now I'm looking at VO3. I'm like, man, this looks like I was working on that technology like 30 years ago.
Yes,
This is like insane. Now, what VO3 has done is they have taken Heigen has taken VO3 and incorporated within the Heigen, and basically you can make an entire movie with our face on without changes, right? It's like the Heigen technology because it'll look
yes,
exactly like me, the way I speak, my body language. There is VO3 predicts, but this is like it exactly knows how I'm going to speak, how I'm going to behave. And now it uses VO3 technology to do this. And I think what we are seeing is a pretty phenomenal future that kind of is scary in a way. So, what is my role as a technologist? What is my role as a data analyst? What is my role as a strategist? If there is some other tool that can do everything that I can do, almost like 95% in like a fraction of the time.
I think you just said it. Well, first off, I would not want to be in marketing nowadays. I would not want to be in marketing. I would not want to be in accounting or anything that's like very prescriptive that you could just draw out an SOP for, because AI will be able to do all that in the near future. But I have realized, and way too late, that data analytics is a huge part of successful AI. So if you don't understand, if you look at a company like ours that has like 9 different platforms full of unstructured data, like if you ever wanted to use agentic AI, if you ever really, really want to leverage AI inside of your system, like all that's got to be organized. And then I'm looking at like going forward, I'm talking to my boss. Like, that's why I told you I'll meet you out in San Fran in June, because I think we're going to go to Databricks. Like, I'm looking at Snowflake or Databricks. Like, do we go to like a neo cloud type environment where we'll still, yes, have to bring in part-time talent from time to time, but we can fine tune an open source model to a smaller model that works with our company, and then we can actually control things. Because this is where I want to ask you a question, and maybe I'm off, right? But I was on a agentic AI and healthcare conference, world, like people from all around the globe, and they're talking, and I was like, I don't think you guys are realizing, like, if you're using foundation models to power agents inside of a healthcare system. Like every time they adjust their parameters or their weights or their system card, like if you're a marketing company, that's one thing. If you're a healthcare company, like you pretty much have to have a contained environment where you can create digital twins to test these things. You have to have a firewall for any API to a third-party software that's also using predictive models, because if they change things, that's going to change the way that it all just seems like we're making it look a hell of a lot easier and safer than it is. And it's really not that simple. For a startup, yeah. If you're a startup, like, go explore all the stuff. If you're a marketing company, hell yeah, dive right in. But if you're a regulated industry, I'm not sure this stuff is quite as baked as people think it is.
My opinion to this is I was in a conference recently, and one of the biggest problems, one of the persons, and I think it's a symptom of what's going on in all the large companies. The VP of technology came to this person and I said, like, we have 150 projects for AI implementation, and nothing seems to be going anywhere. It's like too complex. What do we do with this? Right? I think that is pretty ambitious. Kudos for taking a step and creating 150 projects. But you want to look at any regulated companies in two ways. One is the operational, one is the technical part. The technical part, especially where the patient data is involved and big decisions have to be made where it actually impacts patient outcomes directly. In healthcare, you got to be very, very meticulous. Slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, and make sure that everything, we have the technology right now, we have the right non-hallucinating technology that will give us robust outputs for us to make those decisions.
Yes.
Then there is this operational part. And I think 90% of the delay happens because of the operational part, because we just take too long for doing these things. And as simple as creating a PowerPoint, I have to do the quality control anyway, even if I create it, but it takes me 2 weeks to create the PowerPoint, 2 days to quality control. What if I can do it in 10 minutes to create the PowerPoint and 2 days to quality control? There is a immediate 2 weeks efficiency scheduling operations. There is like about 90% of the things I think we can deal with it. And how to approach a project like this is basically take that 150 and split it up. There are going to be things that needs regulations, needs high security. Don't touch it right now. Put it in another bucket, assign somebody to think about what are the highest 3 priorities that are among those, say, whatever 50 or 100 projects you have. And with this remaining whatever 100 or 50 projects, think about 3 quick wins which will have the highest impact. Win those, then go to the next 3. Don't work
Get
on
that snowball rolling.
gets the ball rolling. Get the wins. Get the wins. And these are low security operational things. How can I help everybody in my company to create internal PowerPoints in 10 minutes? That's it.
Yeah, I would agree. This is where I kind of differentiate from the guys that have aside from the fact I'm not making a bunch of money off my podcast, but the podcasters that are making a bunch of money, they seem to be saying, like, if you're just interfacing with AI, like, you give it an input, it gives you an output, you copy and paste it, like, you're way behind, you should be automating things. And I'm like, I'm not sure about that. I think that is a great way for the world as a whole to be learning how to interface with AI, and it still keeps the human way in the loop so that you're checking and you're learning bad habits, good habits. And then on top of that, like, you're scaling up. I'm pushing more towards, like, I could go back 3 years to when ChatGPT launched 3 years ago tomorrow and tell myself anything. I'd be like, start learning about data analytics and data architecture. And as you're exploring this AI stuff, because context engineering and, like, how you actually give access to data and all these things, whether you have clean data, whether that data is organized in a way that large language models versus machine learning can read it, like, all that stuff is stuff that nobody talks about, that doesn't have a science degree. And it's all these lay people that don't understand just how important all that is. And those people are going to be real expensive to hire. And from my perspective, like I actually got a mentee, a mentor mentee. I got a sophomore at Purdue University. The kid is in data science, and I was like, listen, let's meet once a week. You help me like learn enough about data to know what I don't know, and I will help you figure out how to get a hell of a lot better job than you think you're going to get when you get out of Purdue, because you have one of the most valuable skill sets. You're going to get out with one of the most valuable skill sets in the market. And so that's he and I are doing that, and that's going to be useful because I don't have 3 years to learn about data the way I did about large language models, right? Like I need to learn it like tomorrow. And
tomorrow.
it took me a long time to even understand what people were talking about when they're talking about back propagation or recursive self-learning, all these terms with AI. And now I'm looking at the data thing and I'm like, oh God, here we go again.
Fair enough. I think it kind of sparks an idea when you spoke about that. And I think it's really important. For me, it helps me to put it in a structure, standardized structure. And the way I put the thought process for my own benefit and people I talk to is in the RACI form, right? For any project, anything that we are working on, we put like somebody is responsible, somebody is accountable, somebody is consulted, somebody is informed. So we primarily look at these four things: the responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. And I think the AI is going to do a lot of damage for people who are actually responsible, in the position of responsible, people who are actually doing the coding. For example, Python code I did learn, but I didn't use it every day, so I forget. But if I want to create a Python code right now, it's not too difficult for me, right? It is like Java. It's not too difficult. I know how to create it using the chat GPTs. I can create a pretty darn good code. But what differentiates me from the person who actually knows the coding is all this back-end effect of creating a code which can like have security leaks and all this stuff. So basically, coding itself, the responsible part of the job and the thought process is going to be less and less valuable because a lot of people can actually create the initial code, which takes hours and used to take months. You can create it within days and weeks. But I think the most important part is people who are in a position of being accountable, because there is going to be a human who's going to be accountable every single time. You can't have a team of AI and have another AI accountable for making the final decision. It has to be a human who's accountable. There needs to be a consultant. And I think you can consult the AI as much as you want, but eventually you want to have a super expert who's a consultant. And then there is the informed person who is like sitting on top of everyone saying that, hey, we have taken care of all these securities, and inform. Only then it gets implemented. What I am essentially coming to is the same idea, but it is a little bit more crystallized in my mind, at least, that look here, as a programmer, you don't have to be scared that you will lose your job because you're thinking from a perspective of a person being responsible for developing your program, developing your code. But your value is not there. Your value is being the consultant, being the accountable person, because I can't be that because I'm not a programmer, but you can be. So there is still value in doing data analytics, being technical, learning the core limitations of any technology, because whatever AI creates is going to do a pretty darn good job. You don't have to create it, but you have to be in a position to understand it. And I think that's how I crystallize these two differences to make sure that, okay, you know what? I'm getting stressed out because they can program. But if I'm an expert, if I spent 5 years in college, 4 years in college, learning this aspect, I should be confident enough that I know this subject enough to say that AI is getting their 95%, but I can fill up the last 5%. Does
Yeah,
it make sense?
it does. It does. And I think that the kids coming out of school who have a little bit better social skills and EQ, who can learn the business side of that. Like, eventually, right now, you're going to have a middleman for a while, and there always kind of has been, right? So you take like an HR department head and a software engineer, or a platform, a SaaS company, right? They're always had, like, the two don't really speak the same language, and you had to kind of have somebody in there between them translating it. I think that in betweener is going to become very important for a while,
Yeah.
but I eventually think that those kids or those young people that develop the data analytics skills or the computer skills are also going to develop the business skills, and they're just going to move into where it's more. Eventually, I think we're just going to need less people to run the economy, and the higher performers will be the ones, and we'll have to figure out what to do with the people that are replaced. But that's probably a good decade away.
Yes and no. I think I as history has shown us that we develop better technology, we make our lives more complicated
Yeah,
effectively, right? It's
yeah.
like we figure out how to make a microwave. We want a clock on a microwave. Like, whoever thought about a clock in a microwave? Nobody thought in the original aspect. We want a clock on a microwave. We want a clock on our stoves, right? We want it is just that we just make things more and more and more complicated. So, for example, a great example would be when we got into the technology of car, a gasoline powered engine, we were all a bit concerned that we will kill the industry and a lot of people will be unemployed who are especially tending to the horses and building the carts. Except what happened was our cities grew 5 times bigger. So
Yes.
we just got busier and busier and busier. And with AI, what is I think is going to happen is our lives are going to get even more complicated. And just to maintain these systems, I think instead of people building horse carts and tending to horses, are going to fix cars and be at a perhaps in a more complicated area, but the need for that area is going to be so huge that we can't even think about where this is going to go. And I have struggled with this, like everybody else, is that what is next for us? So, where is our next Wild West? Where is our next space exploration, right? Where is our next? So, we are going to expand. So, I think as individuals, we just have to think about where we place ourselves, and it is not going to be so. I can't go and talk to my uncle and ask advice because that thought process has dramatically changed. If I really want to understand, it is the Purdue student that you are talking to. Those are the people who are going to tell you that, hey, this is where the changes are happening, and based on your experience and their insight, we can come to a conclusion saying that in next 2 years, this is where I need to place myself. So I tend to disagree with that statement that a lot of jobs are going to go away. I feel that we will just make our lives really complicated and we will need more people to manage this complication.
I got a
And we
couple
will use
questions I
a,
want to throw
yeah,
on that.
yeah,
First, I don't disagree with you. If you look at a company like Anduril, like, you see what young, uninhibited people can do. I mean, Anduril, that works for the Department of Defense. We actually have a guy who was one of the chief operating officers at Anduril. Are you familiar with Anduril?
no, I'm not. Yeah, give me a
They
bit of
they
background. Yeah.
build like spaceship type war technology. Basically, they're
Okay.
the guy that runs it, Palmer Luckey. He's like a
Okay.
32-year-old with a mullet that wears Bermuda shorts and flip flops, and he's
Man.
he's the real life Tony Stark. I mean, he really
Okay.
is. And I'm not a
Okay.
comic book guy, but I know who Tony Stark is. Like, and this guy is just building insane defense weapon. And he's got a team, just of a small team of young, really good people that are doing this kind of stuff. So I don't disagree with that. I heard something the other day that really resonated with me, which is when it comes to embodied robotics, we're kind of between the GPT and the chat GPT moment, right? So when the general processing transformer was first developed, like, it was really cool, but we just didn't know what the hell to do with it. And then by the time Chat GPT first launched, Google and a bunch of other companies had figured out how to really leverage neural networks and those transformers to do a whole lot. And robotics is kind of there. Like, we kind of get how to do robotics, but we haven't figured out like the fine-tuned version of it. But I do think that when that happens, that we're gonna mass produce robots really fast. And I could see space exploration and expanding beyond the Earth. But the only problem I have with what you're saying is the level of intelligence it takes to fill the jobs you're talking about, not everyone on this planet meets. Not even close.
Very true. Very true. So that's a complex one, and I don't think I have spoken about that to on a recording. So this is probably the first time I'm speaking about. What I am predicting here is that we are going to reach a level that we have never achieved in our human history. So why I think it is going to be that way is, like, for example, if you take Newton's example, what was Newton doing when the fruit fell on his head? He had basically sitting in a park and a fruit fell on his head. It is a good scenario to tell you his condition. He was rich. Basically, food was falling off the trees and he was relaxing. So he was not like struggling for food. He was not working. And basically, he had that mental space and he came up with ideas. Newton was a genius, but I'm sure there are many other geniuses who were there at his time, after him and before him, except that they were tilling the land. They did not have the mind space to sit and have the luxury of an apple fall on their head effectively. So what has happened with the chat GPT is it has taken away a certain burden that humans have always had. And it is a burden of critically thinking and decision making. So now we are scared that once our critical ability of thinking and decision making is taken away, what is our role in this world? Why do we exist? It's an existential question. But the fact is, I think humans have another level that we have never reached before, but collectively, we are going to go in that level. What happens if most of the human beings are sitting in a park where food is falling on their head and all of us are thinking about relativity? What happens then? I think that's where things change. Where are we going to? The most historic jarring difference that we have from our ancient, say, 10,000 years ago. If you pick up a person from 10,000 years ago and teach them calligraphy, for example, they'll be masters of it because their whole mindset is focused on using their hands to create. Every single person from the day they are born, they're creating and creating the most intricate knots, most intricate things just to survive. And when you take them and you put them in current arts, like exact same person into this, they are going to be far superior than us in using their hands. But as human beings right now, we don't have that skill set because it's not required anymore because machines do it for us, like a sewing machine does it for us. But our thought processes are way advanced, even though the intelligence is equal. Our thought processes are socially, we have evolved. And I think this is the next level we are going to go. And I would love to live another 10 or 20 years to see what that is. And I have no idea, but I think we are going to go there. And I think all of us are going to be shocked. Damn, we lived so many decades without that.
Well, I will not disagree with you. So when I hit 50, I'm 52. When I hit 50, I had a pretty wild youth, and I've had like 9 lives like a cat. And I remember when I hit 50 thinking like, everything else is kind of a bonus. I've lived a pretty full life. And then all this stuff started happening with AI and quantum physics. And now I'm like, oh shit, I don't want to die. Like, it's too
Exactly.
exciting. I want to see what happens in the next 20, 30 years. But what you threw out there is I don't think implausible, but I think that your timeline's a little short. I think that you would have to thin out a lot of the population that will have trouble surviving once robots do a lot of the menial work, and people who don't have, even people, I think even I will have problems in a world 20 years from now, because in order to do all of those things to keep up with that technology, you really have to have a very mathematically tuned mindset. Right? And like being a poet or a great literature reader in the age of technology, it might make you an anomaly that you could sell your wares for, but it's not going to make you super useful in the functioning of that economy. However, I do, and Elias Guskever said this, I do think that we can't leave out the possibility of neural links and the fact that we might be not just our brain in the next decade, right? Like if AI systems, if there are a few more breakthroughs, I don't think it'll be large language models, but if there are a few more breakthroughs and we reach systems that are far smarter than we are, there's probably a good chance that we may at some point in time find a way to get that kind of stuff into our head that doesn't necessarily turn us into a cyborg, right? But that greatly uses the 80% of our brain that's inactive half the time anyway. And so that I could see being like a whole step change in the evolution of human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, no, prosthesis is not because you can't do what the average human beings can do, but prosthesis for extraordinary abilities. And it could be like a shoulder joint that is controlled by the neural link in your head. And you can, I don't know, you can be a super powered athlete. And that brings us to, and I think every time this technology has come through, we also have had issues with a certain population getting negatively impacted. And what that means is people who cannot adapt or do not have, like, say, for example, if I can afford it, if I have a chip implanted in my son's brain, the fact that he's going to be the smartest person in the class is going to differentiate from other kids who cannot afford the implants by the fact that he's going to be successful, his children are going to be successful. And we have seen that with advent of every technology, whether it's technology of industrial revolution, there is a society that has done
Yes.
better than the other society,
Yep.
whether it is invention of banking, there's like a few people who have taken control of the monetary flow and they have become as a result oil. It just about any industry we have seen that, and I think we will see that of differentiating. There are people who are going to be, but overall, if you just look at the general society, even in the poorest society in Africa, luckily, because we do get a lot of antibiotics from India and a lot of treatments and know-how from different places. Even the median survival rate in poorest African areas are better than medieval England. So it is the overall raise that we are talking about, but there are going to be definitely societal differences. And what we can hope, what we do now is going to be determinant of certain people not genuinely getting left into medieval times.
Well, and that's why I think we need to be having more pragmatic conversations about this stuff. So the conference that I was at, somebody brought up the fact that call them overregulated, but most of the conversations in Europe are about human rights, about bias, and then you get these guys like Jeffrey Hinton in America who like are talking about existential threats of the Terminator coming to get us. And that's what they're going up to Congress for. And I'm like, why do we have to be such sensationalists? Why does it have to, who the hell knows if yes, if we actually can create something far smarter than us, the idea of us trying to control it is kind of the idea of the tail trying to wag the
Yeah,
dog. But
exactly.
we don't know if that's ever even going to happen. So how about if we just concentrate on like what we do have and how to regulate that in a way that is beneficial to the most humans or the most Americans as possible? But Americans just seem to be so sensationalist. If it's not big theater, then we don't get involved in the conversation as a whole.
Yep, 100%. I think the cat is out of the bag, right? So we simply cannot stop this from happening. So At the consumer market, you can regulate it, but who is going to regulate the military in China, military in the United States, military in like 100 countries? I mean, there is no reason for India not to develop some devastating technology. I think transparency is going to be the key, and keeping it open and not letting consumer technology lag too much behind the military technology. And I think that is super important. But with transparency, it is hard to predict what the future is. But one thing you can say is you cannot stop it. It's out. It's really out. There is nothing you can do
Agree.
about it. Yeah. You just have to talk about how to keep it transparent.
I got to
And
throw one more thought at you
yeah,
because this one keeps resonating with me. To me, it seems impossible, but I had a guy on my show by the name of Dekai. He's a professor. He's a keynote talker. He's University of Hong Kong. He wrote a book called Raising AI, and his premise is essentially that these aren't toasters, that these are intelligent machines, and that do as I say, not as I do has never worked with rearing children. And if we don't do the same for this intelligence as it becomes smarter and it sees how we actually treat each other, that eventually we're going to be screwed because it's going to mimic us. And I'm not sure that I disagree with that. I'm just not sure that it's possible to get a large swath of the human race to be nicer because of it.
yeah. I mean, look here. Historically, if you go back to a book from 1980s or 1990s, Richard Dawkins, he says that if humans actually end up being nicer to each other on a whole, it is a different species. We're not humans at all. So historically, we have never been. It's like, I think the example that Richard Dawkins gives is, it's like a zebrafish without the stripes. Zebrafish without a stripe is just a fish. It's not a zebrafish. So we carry that stripe. But as an individual in the AI, in the forefront of AI, in forefront of technology, what we need to do is make a decision actively whether we want to be on the right side of the history or the wrong side of the history. So what that means is we have to recognize that that brings us to like I think it was late 2024, Noah Hariri, another great intellectual like Dr. Kai, is uh, he recognizes that we are going to be in the AI itself is going to be an information node, and there will be a time we cannot tell whether it is AI making a decision or a human making a decision and implementing it all around the world, right? It might look like this decision is coming from White House. It might look like it is coming from Kremlin. It might look like it's coming from Beijing. But we really don't know if it was the AI that made the decision or the human that made the decision. The flip side of it is, as far as it is generally what the humans want, does it even matter? Because the people in Kremlin, in the White House, or in Beijing, are they really currently, even as human beings, actually looking after the populace or not? So the control is still as much control as we give them. Regardless whether the decision comes from a human being or AI, it is up to us as an individual to decide where on this history we want to stand on. Are we going to be okay with this decision or not? It is irrelevant whether it is from AI or a human being, because they're not looking after us. They are looking for their own benefit. Effectively, to go back to that thought process of Dr. Kai, is we are not going to be nicer unless we fundamentally genetically change ourselves. Like, we have a CRISPR gene technology and we go and treat every single human being so that we take away our basically fight and flight response and start trusting every single person. We are not going to change. We are
Have
what
you
we
seen
are.
Pluribus?
Which movie is
Have you
this?
seen Pluribus? This show?
No. Is it okay?
It's
Is it
an
about this
alien. It's
topic?
it's an alien virus that all but 11 people on Earth catch, that turns them all into like these agreeable, nice people. And essentially, they're
Man,
like zombies, only nice, and they have a collective hive mind like the Borg. But I mean, that's the thing, is like what you're describing immediately made me think of that. But you know, you're from India, so you're very familiar with Buddhism, and I have always thought, like, if you look at Buddhism and even some of the Hinduism and like Gandhi and some of the people from that, like it is very possible for millions of people to be very kind to one another. Right, so it's not like it's a pure anomaly. It's not like there haven't been huge populations that actually lived by that. Now, if you look at like Confucianism, yeah, maybe they got a little too lazy, but even Taoism in Central China, like there have been some serious times in the East. I don't know in the West that we've ever had a great period of or a huge population of non-warring or non-rivaling people. And that's not to knock them. It's just I don't know of any examples of it. But it is possible to live by, those precepts. Do no harm. Don't tell lies. I mean, it all lines up with Judeo-Christian, the Ten Commandments as well. Like, just be nicer to people. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Like but I don't think if the way that we pre-train models now off of the corpus of the internet, there is not a lot of good examples of that type of living. It definitely does not outweigh the amount of examples there are of malicious and climb the ladder at whatever cost you have to others, almost sociopathic. I mean, if I was an alien race, I would be like, I don't know why you guys label like some people as sociopaths because kind of you're a sociopathic race as a whole from afar, right? And so I don't know. I hate to be negative, Nancy negative, but if truly these things are going to reflect us, we either have to figure out how to program that out, or we have to, or we might be we might be screwed.
I think the part of the success of human being is greed. I think we wouldn't have been as successful but for greed. So it is like the moment you take that characteristic away, you cannot take it away with leaving greed alone. The moment that happens is we will probably start behaving and living like cows, right? It's like, calm, grazing around and not do anything at all. So I think we cannot inherently take away the meanness of human beings, the tribalism of human beings, without actually not being the beauty in the ugliness that we have. So there is certain aspect of humans that make us humans, that we have the capability of being evil, but we choose not to. I think that is a beautiful thing.
That's probably true because if you look at primates, I mean, they can be pretty aggressive, pretty territorial, pretty greedy sometimes. Definitely have a hierarchy of who's and I can just remember throwing ice to a monkeys at the zoo, and a little one took it, and the big one like chased it down and hit it on top of the head and yelled at it, just took it away from it. I was like, yeah, that looks like a playground when you're like 10, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I don't know, I don't know where that leaves us, but
All right.
it's all very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh,
It's
uh,
almost we're past an hour. We got to circle back to like reality here, and I don't want the audience to leave without getting some really gold nuggets from you as far as if you're in the healthcare space and you're not working for an enterprise healthcare company. Like, where do you suggest people like spend their time when it comes to AI? What should they be exploring? What should they be learning about? What should they be testing?
For sure. So I have spoken to about 100 people, and there is one theme that strikes time and time again. If you're in healthcare, don't spend your time too much learning about AI itself because there is too much. So you will be spending 36 hours of a day in a day, right? It's like you can spend 36 hours in a day and still not catch up with the developments that's having in AI. So that's kind of an thing that is going to destroy your timelines and not help you achieve the goals that you want to achieve. That brings me to the goals. So what are we trying to solve in healthcare or any industry? The problems. So identify the most critical problems that there are there, then go about finding the best tool to solve that problem. And I think that is where the AI literacy comes in. So if you spend the next 6 months learning about AI, it's not going to be relevant for next 6 months because the technology has changed. It's outdated. So why spend 6 months learning about AI when you can actually use those 6 months to solve a real world problem? So start looking for problems, and the AI, then look for AI. That's how you increase your AI literacy and go forward. I think that is the only most important thing that I would say. Generally, this is not even in healthcare, but in every other thing. The second thing I would like to, if I may, is that okay?
Sure. No, go for
Yeah.
it, man.
The second thing, what we want to do is this is for everybody. So there are three systems, in my opinion, are putting millions and millions of dollars into AI, which is a good thing. The payers, the health systems, and the big pharmaceutical companies. They are spending a lot of money into AI. But at the end, who are the two other stakeholders who are most important for healthcare? The physicians and the patients. Physicians, as in like the bedside providers, like the
Yes.
nurses, and patients are going to be, these are the two entities, are probably the end users of everything healthcare. Because the health system is usually for profit, even they say non-profit, it is basically they have to make this system as profitable as possible or as sustainable as possible. Their main thing is not the physicians, not the patients, but how we can expand. Same thing for the payers, same thing for the pharmaceutical companies. Fortunately, the physicians and patients are left behind. They do not have a big voice, even though you can hear them, because I am selective about listening to what physicians and patients have said, but I am in an echo chamber. But the fact is, the physicians and the patients are going to be left behind. And everything we have seen in last 20 years where things have gotten too expensive or too burdensome for physicians are going to be exacerbated in the next 5 to 10 years. So I don't know what we have to do, but we have to do something differently to make sure that the physicians and patients' voice are going to be going to have an equal seat at the healthcare tables where these decisions are made. So I think these two things are quite important to me, and I think about it all the time. But beyond that, it was such a pleasure talking about this. If you
No,
have any
I
questions,
gotta
yeah,
throw a couple. Kid, you have one more second? I gotta throw a couple.
sure.
You gave me a couple ideas. So one, I read AI in healthcare, which was the medical doctor that helped train Da Vinci, one of the smaller models that eventually led to ChatGPT 3.5. And he brought up a hell of a point that you were just that goes with what you were just bringing up, which is if your average GP, general practitioner, has currently 7 minutes with a patient, and right now, and on average, they spend 4 minutes of that taking notes, right? If you use an AI note taker, which when he made the book, like we didn't have Firefly and all these great, but if he uses an AI note taker, which gives him back those 4 minutes, will the hospital system allow him 7 minutes of patient FaceTime, or will they say he needs to see two patients every 7 minutes? And that is where I see
Exactly.
this
It's a
technology
problem.
being very misused in healthcare.
That's exactly is going to happen. And 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 the payment is going to be half as much for each patient because they're seeing two patients for, so the doctors get screwed, right? Because they're seeing more patients, they don't see the benefit of it at all whatsoever, right? Patients are no change for patients. In fact, as we make it more and more efficient, the question is, because we have such robust analytics, do we even have to have a doctor see? Can we get away with just nurses
Yeah.
seeing the patients?
Does everybody scale
Yeah,
up? Does your
right,
community health
exactly.
worker become a nurse practitioner? Your nurse practitioner becomes a surgeon because they've got the technology to empower them. But here's one more I want to throw at you because I don't want to keep you here all day. This is something I've been thinking about recently. I want to get your thoughts on. So, healthcare, first off, is not going to be disrupted by, like, there's going to be plenty of healthcare jobs out there going forward, right? Until we have a whole generation of babies who are raised by synthetic robots, like, people are not going to want a robot taking care of them, and we don't even have those robots yet. So healthcare is a great place, but you have a lot of programmers, you have a lot of data analytics people, you have a lot of people getting undergrad degrees coming out who are having trouble finding jobs. My thought is, why not start creating places for them to go and get entry-level healthcare jobs? Train them as an EMT, train them as a paramedic, right? So now not only do they have a job instead of not having a job, not only do they find something that they may find some meaning in a job, but they bring all their skills into healthcare, right? And so they can teach the healthcare people how to navigate the technology at a much more rapid pace. And you start to build this flywheel of good jobs for people with STEM degrees and healthcare advancing way faster than it would have.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the things that although we feel that healthcare is in a really advanced state, we are not. We are at a very nascent stage. Definitely, we want to. There's one thing that AI is not going to replace in next, I think, next 5 years to 10 years. It's really hard to predict 10 years, but 5 years perhaps is going to be the empathy part that comes in healthcare. So any job that requires a human level empathy, like in a senior living or as I said, EMTs and bedside care, I think that will still are going to exist. That comes to something that he commented early on is that I don't want to be in marketing. It's a very risky place right now.
Yeah.
Right. I think there is a common theme there. Why not marketing? Why not? There are certain things in healthcare as well that has that common thread with the marketing. Why not marketing is, I think, the major crux of marketing is words. It's the language. Language is what makes marketing happen, how you
And it's
present
done
the
in a
data.
computer, not with another human being.
Right. Yeah, it's done in a computer. So, which technology is really good at language? Let's guess, large language model. Oh, wait. So this is whole thing is about the language. So marketing basically becomes a gnarly space, and marketing has adopted LLM at a much rapid fashion than anything else. And there are two other places that the AI is having high impact in healthcare as well. It's the mental health space. It is getting adapted really fast. Again, because the main modality of mental health care are words. You sit and talk and you resolve issues. There are conditions where you want to treat with medications, but majority of the healthcare, it operates on the words and understanding the issue. And what is really good at words is again large language models. The second thing, which is also basically becoming a standard of care, is something that you see and observe. That means all the imaging technology that is also going to take a hit going forward within next 4 or 5 years. If you are in this space, rethink how you can utilize your expertise than other than like just looking at a microscope. How can you utilize your expertise to manage the AI agents who does this job for you? So it is very critical, coming back to your point, that you take this expertise and help them realize how AI can augment their expertise rather than compete with them, because it's going to be, unfortunately, this is going to be not controllable even with regulations. And if you want me to keep speaking, I can add why this cannot be controlled even with proper regulations. I'm happy to add to that. Yeah.
Dude, I'm not. I'm cool. You might
All
be my
right.
first. I was talking to somebody just the other day in a long podcast, and I said, I'm going to start doing like the Lex Friedman style thing in 2026, like once a month, where I just let it go for 2 or 3 hours and see what happens. But we won't go that far. But I'm not going to put any constraints on it because I do want to hear. And I actually think, and you know how Republican I am, but I actually think Bernie Sanders has some pretty good ideas on how to transition the economy as we start to see more things get automated. So dive in there.
So what is the specific thing that Bernie Sanders said? If I can connect that idea to this, what are you referring to?
The robot tax was the number one
Okay.
thing that I thought. So the
Okay.
more they
Okay.
automate, the higher tax rate a corporation pays, so that they actually are paying into basically a UBI pool for those who are unable to get work for temporarily or long term.
Okay. Yeah. So those are basically regulations, and I think those regulations may not hold too long. Here is the reason. Because what's going to happen is we think about regulating technology based on an ideal situation, like say you're living in middle of a city, like in LA. Do I really need a telehealth service? Do I really need a robot to suture my open wound? Right? No, because I can walk down and there is a hospital, there is an emergency center. No matter which direction I walk into, there's an emergency center. So I really don't need. So if I regulate in LA saying that, hey, you cannot actually have the robots here in the hospital. It will stand for a bit. But what is not going to stand is in the rural areas. So you have a hospital where there are no nurse practitioners or nurses who want to move there. But if you invest $300,000, you get a wonderful robot that can suture up open wounds for one-time investment and stuff. The salary is what is, it is a necessity now. It's not, the regulation cannot go against it. When you have the technology to save a person's life, but there is no one to implement it except a robot, the robots are going to be a commonplace in the rural area. Telehealth is going to be a commonplace. What is that going to happen is going to create codes for reimbursements with Medicare, with Medicaid, with private insurance that people will pay for those procedures that has been actually done using technology. What that means is now the hospitals in the city are going to see, why am I spending so much? It is cheaper. Now it is a regulatory, which is a forced regulation versus an economical choice. It's a financial choice. What are we going to do?
You're
History
not
has
wrong.
shown that we are going to make it cheaper.
You're not
So
wrong. And if you
yeah,
start taxing the hell out of corporations, they'll just move offshore,
yeah,
especially when
exactly.
you're going to be looking for data centers and the Middle East is full of sunshine and solar energy. And I mean, yeah, it will be interesting, man. But I have
Yeah,
so enjoyed talking to you.
yeah, me too, Jason. It was so much fun. It was
It
awesome.
is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There are a lot of things that I thought about. I've never spoken, so it gave me an opportunity. So I'm thankful for it.
Well, thank you, and we'll do it again.